Watercolor. Before you begin, here are some samples of brush techniques used in watercolor painting. Wash. This is the most basic technique. Wet the area of paper to be covered first, then mix plenty of pigment to easily fill the entire area. When complete, the wash should be left to dry and even itself out. Glazing. Glazing is similar to watercolor wash, but uses a thin, transparent pigment applied over a dry existing wash. See this sample on the variations of tone when applied in layers. Each layer must be thoroughly dry before applying the next glaze. Wet in wet. Notice the soft, fuzzy edges. This is because the paper is damp or wet. This technique can be applied over existing washes provided they are thoroughly dry. Simply wet the paper with a large brush and paint into the dampness. Hard edge. A hard edge technique is ideal for defining edges and works best in areas that demand detail. In portraiture, it allows definition in features, hair, and clothing. Dry brush. A brush is loaded with pigment and barely any water, then is dragged over a completely dry paper. The marks produced by this technique are very crisp and hard-edged. This technique lends itself well to weathered wood, such as barns, old wood fences, and rough surfaces. Spatter. Prepare for a mess. Use an old toothbrush and rinse the bristles thoroughly before dipping your toothbrush into the pigment. Grip the toothbrush bristles with your thumb and move back across the bristles while aiming into the preferred area of your painting. Salt. While your painting pigment is still wet, you can apply this technique by creating a myriad of light, star-like shapes for textural effects. Experiment with various types of salt and throw the crystals onto your pigment. This also works well to create the effect of a snowstorm. Some experience in watercolor painting is recommended before you begin your portrait painting in watercolor. I recommend that you do exercises to find out how this paint flows and what you can expect from watercolors. Following this demonstration, a list of supplies is presented. Begin with a very light drawing of your subject and have your reference close by. If you have a live model, that's even better. With watercolor, you always begin with the lightest tones, never the dark values. Start by tearing off a narrow strip of watercolor paper. This will be used as a test strip. Test your paint once you've mixed your desired color, and when satisfied, you can apply this to your painting. In this demonstration, I have dampened the paper after I finished the drawing and have begun to add the skin color. When you change your colors, make sure your brush is clean. Use lots of water to clean your brushes. You must work quickly before the paper dries. Note the soft edges. This is because the paper is damp. For shadow areas, I like to use blue. See how it works. The hair, which is quite dark, is painted in lighter tones. Once you have covered the essential areas, let the paper dry. If you want to speed up the process, you can use a hairdryer to dry the paper. Gradually start to mix stronger values of color. If you find that some colors are too dark, you can take your brush with clean water and lift the darker areas of color out to lighten the pigment. This is shown in the lighter areas of the face, such as the cheeks, bridge of nose, chin, forehead, and so on. I begin to put details into the painting. Using the tip of my brush, I can paint fine lines as seen in the treatment of the hair. When painting hair, your brush strokes should follow the same direction as the hair grows. A few splashes of color add spontaneity to your painting. I encourage you to experiment. If you wish to rework your painting, you can take your watercolor paper and run water under a faucet and scrub most of the paint off. Use your flat brush. The result will be a ghostly image. Once the paper is completely dry, you can begin again. This is why a good quality watercolor paper is recommended. Lesser qualities will not allow you to do this. Recommended supplies for watercolor painting. A top quality watercolor paper made from 100% cotton. You can purchase hot press. This means a smooth surface, or cold press paper, which means a bumpy surface. This video will show the painting done on cold press paper, and when looking closely, you can see a textured, bumpy surface. This is about personal preferences on which kind of paper you choose. The recommended paper weight is 140 pounds or upwards. Find out more on paper weight when you purchase this from your art supply store. Top quality watercolor paints. You don't need many to start with. I recommend to begin with a limited palette. Start with cyan, magenta, and yellow. These three colors have the potential to make a full color painting. Later you can add, these are my favorites, cadmium yellow, cadmium red, alizarin crimson, burnt sienna, cobalt blue, burnt umber, Prussian blue, and sap green. Do not use black or white. For black, we mix colors that give us a rich and vibrant black, and for white, it is the color of the paper. Good quality brushes. To begin with, you only need two, a number 8 round and a 1.5-inch flat. Make sure that these brushes are of a very good quality, and if you look after them, wash them with soap and water after you put your painting away, they will last a lifetime. You need a flat surface watercolor mixing tray. Bigger is better. You don't need the best in this category. A lid is beneficial to keep your paints moist so they don't dry out. Big pails for your water and to clean your brushes. Make sure when you are painting that the water does not become dirty looking. When this happens, replace with clean water. Clean rags or paper towels to absorb colors for your brushes and watercolor paper. Masking tape to secure your paper and to prevent buckling when the paper becomes wet. There are endless accessories for watercolor artists, and once you feel comfortable with this medium, you can add on as you please. For this exercise, the above is all you need. Before you begin, keep in mind that once watercolor dries, it can result in up to 25% lighter values. Avoid much handling of your watercolor paper. The oil from your fingertips and hands will disrupt the surface.